Happy Monday, Brewers fans. A new week presents new opportunities, right? That's at least what we hope for. But this show is all about you guys. We're not going to worry so much about what the Brewers are or are not doing. It is about you. You asked, and I'll do my best to answer. It is Mailbag Monday, one of my favorite episodes thus far here on the Locked On Brewers podcast. Plus, we will take a trip around Major League Baseball and get you caught up on all the biggest and latest deals, including the NL Central. Who did what? Let's find out. Stay tuned. You are Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Brewers fans, welcome to the Locked On Brewers podcast. Thank you for always making Locked On Brewers your first listen each and every day. I cannot thank you enough for the support on my first week here as host of the Locked On Brewers podcast. We are setting record numbers, and that is all because of you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Do not forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms. That's right, Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, there are so many others. If you can, leave me a review. I would love to hear from you guys, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether what you want to see, a new segment, whatever it is you want to do, leave me a review. I will check it out and I will go from there. You can also follow us on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Folks, you are blowing up the YouTube channel, and thank you again. That is thanks to you. We are at 718 subscribers. I'm so close to 1,000. Go to that search button. Just search for the Locked On Brewers. Hit that subscribe button, check out all the videos. And of course, I am your host, Brandon Snide. Like you, I am a lifelong diehard Brewers fan coming to you live, not live, recording this just minutes away from American Family Field. Of course, you know it. I know it as home to our Milwaukee Brewers. You can find me on Twitter if you want, at Brandon_Snide. Look, busy time of year. I said it last week. I appreciate your guys' time, allowing me to steal some of your time to talk about our Milwaukee Brewers. And as always, Locked On Brewers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I took over this podcast about a week ago, a little over a week ago, last Saturday. And one of the things that the previous host did was a Mailbag Monday episode. And it was the one thing that when I first started this, I absolutely wanted to keep it. Interact with you guys, hear from you, get your questions. You and I have some of the same questions, so this is one of my absolute favorite things to do with you guys. I cannot tell you how much I love the interaction between you guys and how you listen and you hear a little bit of my personality. I get to know a little bit about your personality, and I'll say it before and I'll continue to say it. We are the same. We are both, all of us are fans. I just had this mic in front of me, and I'm a fan before anything else. I want to see a championship in Milwaukee just as much as you do. So again, let's not put this off anymore. We have so many questions. These are probably, I would say, well, it's only my second mailbag, but as opposed to last week, there's way more questions this week than there was last week. So we have tons of questions to get into. In fact, the first two segments of this podcast will be all of your questions. And then at the end, we'll get to some stuff that's happening around Major League Baseball. But I want to get to the questions right away. And Bill from Twitter, he has a great question right off the bat. And if you've been paying attention last week, I had Vinny Rottino on the show. I had Ben Ranieri on the show, who covered the Seattle Mariners from as a beat writer last year. His first question on Twitter says, the 40-man roster is at 39. What is the one name you put in slot number 40? So I did a little bit of research. It's kind of what I do every show, not breaking any news here. And I went onto the Brewers 40-man active roster. Okay. And there's some names on here you probably aren't, surprised to see. They're carrying 3 catchers currently. That probably won't happen into the regular season. Their bullpen kind of looks like what you would expect it to look at. Jason Junk is on there. Ethan Small, Aaron Ashby, those guys are on there. It doesn't surprise you. But I went to the outfielder position, and that's where I'm going to get to Bill's answer here. Mitchell's on there, not surprising. Taylor's on there again, not really surprising. Christian Yelich, I would hope he's on there for now. And then you have Winker and Perkins. I remember they signed Blake Perkins to that offseason deal. I don't know if you're going to see a whole lot of Jesse Winker in the outfield. I'm assuming, again, just a guess, just me as a fan coming to you as a fan. I think you'll see Winker do more of some DH work. So as far as the 40-man spot goes, I would like to see it go to Sal Frelick. I think he's the one guy. And again, this is all, subjective to what they do or do not do for the rest of the offseason. If they add a big name or they trade for multiple, people, whatever, that could all change. But that's kind of where I would go, Bill. Would just keep bringing up these kids, whether it's Frelick, whether it's Weimer, I'm okay with it. Again, Bryce Terrain's on here. You're going to probably hopefully see him a lot over there in the infield. And again, we'll see exactly where Winker is. I just don't know exactly what role he's going to have in the team on the defense side of things for the Brewers. So great question, Bill. Always a good listen for you, and your feedback is always great. So let's go over to, we're back on Twitter. MVP Nacho leaves in a question, says, do you want to trade for a Murphy/Jansen if you have to give up one or two of the Mitchell, Weimer, Frelick, or Terrain? Easy answer for me, MVP Nacho. Absolutely not. Not a chance would I give up any or all of them in any scenario as where it stands right now. Now, I love Murphy and Jansen, and I understand offensively and defensively what they can bring to a team. But that's four guys right there that I'm just not sold on giving up right now. It's just something that's I wouldn't be comfortable doing as a Brewer fan. And I assume if you're in the ownership, or even if you're Matt Arnold, who's in his first year as president of baseball operations, you probably don't want to come into your first full season and mortgage some of your future for, what could be a good return. I understand that, but no, I'm not giving away Mitchell, Frelick, Weimer, or Terrain, either. None of them. Because I don't know that. Well, we haven't them yet either. So again, could it be a good deal? It could be on the back end. Sure. Hindsight's always 20/20 with these big deals or with these deals, but those guys could be people that, guys that come up and are vital key parts of what we're hoping for in a championship season here in Milwaukee in the near future. And Mitchell, you've seen a lot of him last year. He's got a lot to bring to the table. So we'll jump over to Facebook here. Barbara's got a good question here. And this one we haven't talked about, but I do think it's going to be a topic amongst Brewers fans, not with me, but her question is, do you see Craig Counsell being on the hot seat this year? Winningest manager, obviously, in Brewer history. That happened last year. I don't. I've said it before, not on this platform, but I'll say it so you guys are aware. I think, in my opinion, Craig Counsell's here for as long as Craig Counsell wants to be here. And I mean that. I think he's going to be here as long as he wants to be here. I don't think he has, there's whatever his plan is, whether he wants to eventually go to another team, whether he wants to stay in Milwaukee, whether he wants to go to the front office, management, whatever. I think wherever Craig Counsell is going to want to be, that's where he's going to be in Milwaukee. I think he's got a spot here for however long he wants. And again, when you become the winningest manager, you're a native of Wisconsin, you played for the Brewers. I think he's going to have the backing of not only a fan base for the most part, but also ownership and the front office and Mark Attanasio and Matt Arnold. Again, Barbara, that's a great question from Facebook. Again, do not forget, guys, we are on Facebook. Just go search at Locked On Brewers Podcast. You can find us on Facebook. Get all of our stuff right on your news feed every single day. So again, thank you to Barbara. We'll go to one more here before we hit a break. Says here, Matthew from Twitter, how do you view third base this season? Do you ride with Urias and Terrain? Add someone maybe? What are the potential adds? Well, you're Matthew, that's a great question. And thank you again over at Locked On Brewers on Twitter. I think your answer is in your question. I view third base. Now, okay, we'll back up. We'll go to the end of your question now. Potential adds. Justin Turner is a name that obviously pops up. He's a right-handed power bat. I think he would, thrive here in Milwaukee. That would answer your questions at third base. And then you have a little bit of flexibility at second base. I think you're going to see a lot of Terrain there. We've talked about that on this show. Abraham Toro's a guy with 4 years of control that you added from Seattle in the Colton Wong trade. I think you'll see a little bit of him there. If you go out and get a Justin Turner, because that would be the potential add, and I'm pulling up the free agents at third base now, and Justin Turner is number one. Brandon Drury, I got to check on him because I thought he signed a deal. Maybe he didn't, but he's on there as well. Evan Longoria, who would be a nice power bat. He's obviously a little bit older. Matt Duffy, I wouldn't necessarily be crazy about, but it wouldn't be the worst. Travis Shaw's on here would be comical, but I'm not sure he would fit in at third base. I don't know why they have him here on third, but nonetheless, the one I would go out, and the Brewers were in on Justin Turner. Now he is 38 years old. He's getting up there, a 6.6 WAR last year. Incredible year out of Justin Turner. He's a guy that I would be the one guy that I would go add to answer your question on the back end. But I think I'm going to view this as a Urias at third, Terrain at second. Obviously, Willy Adames is at first. So those are the situations I see playing out. I do not see them. I think when they offered, when the Turner deal, when it was offered, I believe it was a 2-year, $34 million deal with an option for the third year, which he turned down, which was a similar deal that he signed. I think it was when he stayed with LA with the Dodgers at the time. I don't know if they'd be in on him again. The market has kind of slowed down a little bit as far as big time deals have gone, and we'll go over a lot of the contracts that have been handed out so far. But again, I think you're going to see Urias at third, and I think you're going to see Terrain at second. Again, Toro provides a little bit of flexibility with both positions because we heard Ben Ranieri again. If you missed that episode, missed that interview, go ahead and check that out wherever you get your podcasts. He has the ability to play second and third, and Ben covered him last year, and he's a guy he's high on him. He liked him. 4 years of control. I don't think you're going to see the Brewers go away from him. He's going to be that flexibility, maybe that Jace Peterson type player you see this year. Obviously, his offensive numbers are a little bit lower than what Peterson's were a year ago. But again, new year, new look, new town, new city. Batter's eye at American Family Field is always beneficial. These have been some really great and incredible questions, and we are going to keep it going. We have a question regarding trading Corbin Burnes coming up. We'll get into that question. But one thing we cannot question is betonline.net. Guys, I'm telling you right now, betonline.net is the number one source for all your betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it covered at betonline.net. I actually just went on there to check out some odds for the Brewers to win the World Series. Not looking great, Bob. Not looking great. But anyway, you can check them out. It's so much easier. And if you love sports podcasts, you better like this one first. You better hit that subscribe button. You better hit that like button first here. But you can find the rest of them over at BetOnline as well. They are always the fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. The questions have been pouring in, and I am going to do my best to knock all these out. I cannot tell you guys again how much I appreciate it. Again, each Monday, I will take your questions. Look, it can be Brewers related. It can be baseball related. It can be anything, really. You want to know what my favorite food? I don't care. You say it. You ask it. I'll answer it. So let's jump back onto the questions here. We're going to go to Mark, who is over on Facebook. He drops in a good question here. He asks, should we be concerned about the Cardinals running away with the division this early? Oh, man, that's a great question. So it's not like I can go back and prove this, right? Because you guys probably don't know. You're not probably going back on my tweets from a year ago. And again, you can follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. I picked the Cardinals to win the division last year. Now, that was about middle to late April, I think I picked them. And it was nothing that against the Brewers were doing. Obviously, coming up short, against the Braves in the NLDS. Offense was in tons of questions. What did they do in the offseason? They didn't do a whole lot. Coming into the season, there were still questions. You knew the starting rotation was going to be solid. At the time, you had the back end of the bullpen solidified with obviously Williams and Hader. That is no longer the case. But yes, we should be concerned about the Cardinals. I don't know. If you ask me right now if they're going to win the division, I would say yes. But that's got to be everything stays on par where they're at. Arenado, Goldschmidt, Wilson Contreras. So we'll talk about his deal. Who's a St. Louis Cardinal now for the next 5 years. Joy to the world if you're a Brewers fan. Not saying everything's got to go their way, but obviously you got to make sure you stay healthy and their pitching stays healthy. I think they are the early favorites right now. According to Vegas, they are the betting favorites, and I don't think it's going to be close right now. Cubs still got some questions. We'll talk about, few ads that they had. Obviously, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, they're kind of just keeping their head above water, I guess, for now. And then the Brewers are just a lot of question marks for the Milwaukee Brewers. It doesn't mean they can't be good. The Brewers can still be good. If they're going to let the young prospects play, if you're going to pull up these guys from AAA who finished in AAA last year and you let them play now into this season, we just don't know what they're going to produce. We don't know what to really expect outside of maybe a little bit of Garrett Mitchell, Ethan Small. We talked to Vinny last week about Ethan Small. The flashes are there, but again, haven't seen him for a full year. The Ethan Small, I guess you've seen he was up and down too last year. Either way, I think you got to let some of these guys get into the regular season, play a little bit, and then kind of see what you got in the younger guys. And then who knows, if you're in contention in, June, July into August, the trade deadline, then obviously you go out and you do what you feel you need to do in order to compete on the back end of August and September. So we'll see. But yeah, Mark over on Facebook. Yeah, I'm definitely concerned that the Cardinals are running away with the division this early. Again, on paper, it all looks good, but it looked good last year too. And they ran away with the division. And I, again, according to some insiders, they right now are in on Carlos Rendon, who would also just add to that. So great question, Mark. Thank you. Let's go to Twitter. Lisa on Twitter, she writes in, who do you think our closer could be or should be? Well, Lisa, great question. Another great question, another roster question. Right now, it's going to have to be Devin Williams. You'd have to ask Devin Williams if that's something he likes to do or wants to do, because it definitely didn't look like it after they traded Josh Hader. Now, was that the aftermath of what happened with the Josh Hader trade? Could be. Could it be a little bit of uncertainty in that bullpen? Williams wasn't really sure what his role was going to be following that Hader trade until it became apparent that he was going to be the closer. It could be. I do think they should add one. I'll pull up the guys that I think they could add into that bullpen. I talked about it before as far as free agents, and I said, you could go out and get a guy, like Craig Kimbrell. I wouldn't even be opposed to Taylor Rogers. I know he's not big in Brewers fans' eyes, but I just thought, he had a decent year last year before the trade, and the trade might have screwed him up too a little bit. You never know. I told you I wanted Andrew Chafin. He could be your 6, 7, 8 inning guy if you wanted to put Devin Williams in that 9 slot. Again, Brad Boxberger's still out there. He's a guy I wouldn't mind bringing back for that middle of relief. And again, I think Craig Kimbrell is 34 years old. I think he's still got some gas in the tank. 3.0 WAR last year at his position. I think he's a guy that, again, I don't know what he's going to cost. Edwin Diaz might have screwed up the whole closer money situation with his deal. But again, we'll see exactly. Kenley Jensen headed to Boston, what his deal looks like. How does that affect Craig Kimbrell, who's on the back end of his career? Again, we'll see, Lisa. But I think to answer your question, it's going to be right now. It's going to be Devin Williams. I think you're going to see him commit this offseason, going into pitchers and catchers reporting in a few months, into the training camp, into spring training as the closer. Now, will that change? It could. But again, we have yet to see it, due to no really movement going on in the free agency world. All right. So Peter has a great question. Peter actually asked this last week and I didn't get to it. So I wanted to get to it this week. So I took a screenshot of my phone because this was a really good question. And Peter, he's on Facebook. He was listening to one of my first episodes when it was talking about Corbin Burnes. And you guys remember my Corbin Burnes rant that I went on. So his question is, do you sign Burnes to a $27 to $33 million deal? That's what I referred to as what he could cost. Or instead, do you sign Brandon Woodruff and extend Willy Adames? He goes on to say, I see this as a keep Braun, let Fielder walk type of thing. Great question. Great comparison. I think if you want my real answer, they need to keep all three. I understand some fans will tell me you can't afford it. You don't pay pitchers. You don't pay $30 million. You don't take up 30% of your salary for one player. I get it. But again, if you want to compete in baseball, you have to spend money. Okay, I'm not breaking any news here. We've seen it in San Diego. San Diego, for people that are confused at where I'm coming from with this, because there are some out there that don't like how I have approached the Milwaukee Brewers ownership the last week or so. San Diego ranks just above the Milwaukee Brewers as far as market size. They are literally one step above in the rankings, according to Spotrac, of the Milwaukee Brewers. One. And they've dished out. First off, they've offered 2 $400 million contracts this year alone, aside from paying Machado and Tatis. 2, they offered Aaron Judge over $400 million, and they offered Trey Turner over $400 million. And we'll talk about what they did with Xander Bogaerts, but that's what I'm talking about. The ownership is there. If the owner wants to win, they're going to find ways to win. And this is a great example of owner wanting to win. Why? And Peter, your question is valid. I love it because it's a great question, because I think it's a question that we're going to see a lot of fans debate with each other. You're going to hear a lot of radio shows talk about it. You're going to hear a lot of podcasts talk about it. You're going to turn on the MLB Network and hear them talk about it. It's a great question because it's a real concern. What do? Do you let one go? Do you sign 2? Do you sign 2? Do you let one go? The answer is all 3. But if you're going to have me pick where it is a let Braun or keep Braun, let Fielder walk type of situation, which you asked in your question, then I'm keeping Corbin Burnes because he is the proven ace. He is the Cy Young Award winner, part of the no-hitter in 2021. He is that guy, going to be 28 years old. You got him. You signed him to a 5-year contract. We talked about the possibilities of what a Burnes could cost. And again, it's always up for debate. It's always up for interpretation on what you would do. I just provided some numbers. The 27 to 33 was on average of what I took from DeGrom's deal. There's a handful of other deals. I can't remember off the top of my head what we talked about as far as starting pitchers throughout the league. I had one guy say we got to see what Carlos Rondon signs for. I think Burnes is above where Rondon is, to be completely fair. I think whatever Rondon signs for, Burnes should demand more. He's a better pitcher, in my opinion. But again, it's all up for debate. It's all objective, and that's what I love about it. But again, real answer: keep all 3, Peter. If I had to pick one, I'm keeping Burnes, and I've cemented that opinion, and I'll stay on that for as long as I do this podcast, and I'm going to keep saying it. He's the guy, and he's your guy. You got a game 7, game 5. That's the guy I want out there. Now, I'm not saying Brandon Woodruff isn't that guy. I'm not saying Willy Adames can't be a star or that guy. And we'll talk about Willy Adames here in the last segment. But Corbin Burnes is the guy I want out there without a question. And you got to have those type of players, in my opinion, to compete for World Series. We've seen it in LA. We've seen it in Atlanta. David Gasper was on the show last week from Reviewing the Brew. We've seen it in Washington. He agreed. You got to have that dude on the mound to give your team a chance to win a World Series. Because not only are you giving your team defensively a chance, right? You're giving them the confidence at the plate to take some chances. Swing the bat a little bit. Have a little bit of flexibility in your offense. Take some chances on the base path to create runs, to create, issues on offense for the opposing defense. And that's what you're comfortable with that with Corbin Burnes. Can Brandon Woodruff be that guy? Maybe. Just haven't seen enough of it in a dominant way that we have with Corbin Burnes. I love Brandon Woodruff. Don't take that the wrong way. Started game 7 2018. He's been awesome. He's been awesome. But if I had to pick, I'm taking Corbin Burnes. And finally, Tom from Twitter has a great question. Tom asked a question that he knows is going to get me going here at the end of the show. Are we ever going to do anything big and bold, or will we continue to nickel and dime it? Oof, Tom, that's good. That's a good question. That's an incredible question. I think as it stands right now with this ownership, now obviously David Stearns is not here. I get that. Well, he's still kind of here. I think 2018, in my opinion, you can disagree with me. That's completely fine. I think that was the last year you've seen the Milwaukee Brewers all in, right? Yasmani Grandal, Mike Moustakas. I mean, Christian Yelich that was the first year with Christian Yelich, first year with Lorenzo Cain back in Milwaukee. I mean, they were just incredible. You had Corbin Burns coming out of the bullpen. We mentioned Brandon Woodruff. Will we see that again? Will we see them go all in? Will we see them, like you said, do anything big and bold? I don't. Mark Atanasio's comments over the last few years, operating in the red and, going in, I don't remember how he said it. Whatever he said about when they signed McCutchen, $8.5 million deal, and he broke the bank. Whatever he said, you guys will correct me in the comments on YouTube and on Twitter. But it was something along those lines, right? It was something along those, we went out and got this guy, and we didn't think we could. That's nickel and diming it, in my opinion. And again, you want to do something big and bold, go out and get a Wilson Contreras. And we'll talk about the deal Wilson Contreras signed. But this is the stuff I'm talking about as far as the ownership goes for the Milwaukee Brewers. There are voids on this roster. There are lots of voids on this roster. Again, there might not be if we see these kids come up and play and they fill those spots. We don't know what we're going to get in Bryce Terrain at second base. Is Victor Caratini your starting catcher all year? Who's your closer? From Lisa from Facebook. Is it Devin Williams? He wasn't comfortable there last year. Do you throw him back in there this year? What do you do offensively? Where are these runs coming from? Where are you generating offense? Are you banking on Christian Yelich rebounding again after, not so great years here last, 2 years ago, 3 years? And if you're like Tom and if you're like me, you want to see this team do something big and bold. Now, if that means you're going out, let me ask you this question, Bruce fan. You guys can answer this question. If it meant going big and bold, bringing you to a World Series, maybe not winning it, but at least getting you to a World Series, but then the next 5 years, you're not good, what would you do? Or would you just keep your head above water, according to David Stearns, take, quote, bites of the apple and hope for the best, hope to get hot? Or would you absolutely go out big and bold and you're going to a World Series? I'm taking the World Series. I'm going big and bold. This fan base deserves it. 2.4 million of us went through those gates at American Family Field last year. That's top 15 in Major League Baseball. All of Major League Baseball, little old Milwaukee, top 15 of baseball in attendance, selling merchandise off the shelves, camping out in February for the winter ticket sale, Arctic tailgate. I mean, it's enough, in my opinion. If you buy a sports team and you got the money to pay for a soccer team, Mark A., put your energy, put your efforts, and put your resources into bringing a winning culture, a winning organization, a winning team to the city of Milwaukee. Because I agree with Tom. Are you ever going to do anything big and bold? That's the great question. 2018 was the last time we've seen it. And to be honest, I don't think he was banking on Christian Yelich having the year in 2018 that he did have, and then obviously into 2019 before his major knee injury. But nonetheless, he did. He took advantage of it. He almost got to the World Series. Give me another one of those years. Make it happen. Because this nickel and dime, we're shelling out $8.5 million for Andrew McCutchen, not cutting it. So not cutting it. I agree with Tom. We got to go out and do something big and bold. But wow, these questions were incredible, and I cannot thank you all enough for your time and commitment to the show, to the Milwaukee Brewers. We're all fans here. But speaking of commitment, some teams are committed. I'm going to take a trip around Major League Baseball and get you caught up on all and some of the deals that have occurred over the last week or so. And speaking of deals, check out this. Turn up your radio, turn up your phone. At Locked On Brewers, we believe home should be where you and your family feel safest, especially over these holidays. This season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, SimpliSafe. And right now, SimpliSafe is offering, this is where you turn it up right now. Turn it up, turn it up, turn it up. Locked On Brewers listeners, that's right, that's you. 40% off on your new security system. 40. But don't put this off. Here's why I love it. Okay, I'm gonna give you a few reasons. The crystal clear HD security camera feeds are incredible, and their wide range of high-tech sensors are super awesome and extremely useful. Telling you guys right now, SimpliSafe will have your back. They've had my back, and they were named to the best home security system of 2022 by News and World Report for a third year in a row. Check them out now at simplisafe.com. Well, Brewers fans, depending on where you stand, there has been a ton of offseason movement amongst players and certain contracts. We got about 30 seconds here. We're going to wrap this around and look at some of the division news. The Chicago Cubs have been somewhat busy, signing Cody Bellinger to a 1-year, $17.5 million contract. They also signed Jameson Taillon to a 4-year, roughly $68 million contract. He pitched for the Yankees last year. We talked about it before. The St. Louis Cardinals, yes, the dreaded, annoying, always good, pain in the back. St. Louis Cardinals have added their all-star catcher after they lost their all-star catcher in Yadier Molina to retirement. They get another one whose bat is probably better, whose defense is probably not far from just as good, to a 5-year, $87.5 million contract. If you can't tell how much I hate that for us, just an absolutely nasty lineup with Arenado, Goldschmidt, and I mean, gosh, who else is on there? I mean, they got Paul DeJong. I mean, obviously you got Wilson Contreras. I mean, just they're loaded down in St. Louis. And Carlson, Tyler O'Neill. That's the one I was thinking. Tyler O'Neill last year, who was incredible for them. Yeah, they're going to be tough. St. Louis is going to be tough. It's going to be St. Louis, I think, at the top. So we'll monitor that situation. But the St. Louis Cardinals did add Wilson Contreras on a 5-year, $87.5 million deal. Staying in the NL, not in the NL Central, but the National League East, the Mets have been active, adding Jose Quintana Friday to a 2-year deal. That's in conjunction with already adding Justin Verlander, and they just inked Brandon Nimmo to an 8-year deal. Mets looking to be serious contenders following, I should say, staying serious contenders following the Jacob deGrom leaving for the Rangers. And raise your hand if you had that on your bingo card this year, because I did not see deGrom going to Texas. But again, some teams are just willing to stay with it. And we're going to stay in the NL for these last two big deals that happened throughout the past week or so. Trey Turner goes to the Philadelphia Phillies, losers of the World Series last year. Remember, they finished one game above the Milwaukee Brewers for that last playoff spot, who took them all the way to the World Series. They add a big-time glove and bat in Trey Turner for 11 years, $300 million deals. And again, staying at the shortstop position, staying in the NL as well, over to the NL West, Xander Bogaerts, who goes from Boston to San Diego, 11 years, $280 million. Now, I leave those last two, and I'm going to leave this up to you guys to wrap up this podcast. Trey Turner to Philly for 11 and $300 million. Bogaerts to San Diego for 11 and $280. Do those two deals affect what could be, what we are hoping for as Brewers fans, at least most of us? How does that affect a Willy Adames contract extension? Willie's slated to get 11.5 in arbitration this year. It's up from 4.5 that he got a year ago. Those are major deals. The Brewers are to keep Willy Adames in Milwaukee, and I would put him on the level of those two, offensively and defensively. Are you willing, if you're Mark Ignacio, to shell out $280 to $300 million? We'll see how serious he is, because that's coming up. That day is coming. But again, those are some of the major deals. There's been some minor deals. We'll touch up those throughout the week. But again, Those last two, I want you to really think about. Do you feel comfortable giving Willy Adames 280, 270, 260, 300 for Trey Turner? It's a question that Mark Ignacio is definitely thinking about. And again, something Brewer fans should be thinking about as well. But again, thank you all for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On Brewers podcast everywhere you get podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, all that good stuff. Again, if you could, please leave a review. We are also on Twitter. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Brewers. You can find us on Facebook now, like I mentioned before, at Locked On Brewers Podcast. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Brandon_Snide. Thank you for making Locked On Brewers your first listen of the day. Again, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that, but I got something for you. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Coming up on the next show, I am going to continue to look at the Milwaukee Brewers offseason, but I will be joined from a different voice, another former Brewer, Tim Dillard, fan favorite. Timmy is going to join the show. Stay tuned tomorrow. You do not want to miss it. And again, it's a happy Monday. Put a smile on your face. Have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. And as always, go Brewers.